Piers Morgan had Don Lemon on his program yesterday, and boy, oh boy, was it something to behold. A huge fight, Don Lemon claiming that he was being ambushed by Piers Morgan, which is hilarious considering the kind of journalism Don Lemon used to engage in. And I say used to because basically he only appears on the side of a milk carton these days. But when he was asked about men playing in women's sports, and most specifically that Olympic boxing match where a dude beat the hell out of women and won a gold medal, Don Lemon's answer to that was mind-boggling, and we're going to get to that in a second. First, though, here's how it started. It was ugly. Watch what happened when Piers Morgan said, hey, we're talking about, people losing their job and free speech and the First Amendment. Well, Don Lemon, you lost your job at CNN. Let's talk about that. And Don wasn't so happy. Watch.
This is what led to you leaving CNN. Let's take a look at the clip.
She says people, politicians or something are not in their prime. Nikki Haley isn't in her prime. Sorry. When a woman is considered to be in her prime in her 20s and 30s and maybe 40s.
What are you talking? Wait.
That's not according to me.
Prime for what?
It depends. I mean, it's just like prime. If you look it up, if you Google when is a woman in her prime, it'll say 20s, 30s, and 40s. I don't necessarily.
40s. So I got another.
I'm not saying
decade.
I agree with that. So I think she has to be careful about saying that.
When you watch that, Don, I happened to be watching that live, and I was like, "Whoa, what did you just say?" What do you? I mean, if you had a do-over, would you say that again? I mean, what led you to say that?
Okay, Piers, let me just say this. I'm going to answer your question, but just so the audience knows, and I hope you don't cut this out. When I asked you what subjects you wanted to talk about, you know what you said to me? You said, I want to talk to you about freedom of speech in America and the response to Charlie Kirk's death.
Yeah.
Not once did you mention that we were going to talk about CNN or whatever. So, and had I known that, I probably wouldn't have accepted this interview. You have invited me on many times, and I tell you, Piers, I know you. I would come on your show, but I don't do panels. And so when you said I'm not going to be involved in a panel, I agreed to come on your show. But I thought you would also stick by the subjects that you told me that you were going to talk about.
Just to be clear,
rather than try to ambush me with something.
Just to be clear,
so,
you and I haven't. Well, Don, just to be clear, you and I haven't had any conversation about your appearance here. You're talking about my team talking to you.
Yeah, no, and I saw you, Piers, in a restaurant, and I said, hey, Piers, good to see you. Yeah. I would come on your show, but I don't do panels.
Right.
And I said the same thing to your bookers.
There's only one
and
of
so
you
when
don't.
I asked you, and right. Okay, and so, yes, and I said that's why I agreed to do it. But when you asked me, or when your team asked me what subjects, and I asked them 2 or 3 times, I have the text messages, what do you want to cover? Yeah. Not once was CNN mentioned. So I don't appreciate being ambushed, but let me answer your question.
Hang on one second. Oh, Don, hang on 1 second. Let's just be crystal clear about what's just happened. You brought up the subject of cancel culture. I asked you, did you feel your departure from CNN was an example of that? And you answered the question. And I think it's perfectly reasonable.
And I answered the question.
Perfectly reasonable in that if you'd said to me, I don't want to talk about it, fine. Sorry. You said what you're going to say. By the way, we don't.
Disingenuous.
Don, we don't edit.
I don't like arguing like this. I'm not going to get into an argument with you. Piers, I think that's completely disingenuous. And I think anyone watching that.
What are you talking about?
And so if you will allow me, please.
What are you talking about?
Okay. Did you invite me here to interrupt me, or are you going to let me?
I think you're being a complete dick, if I'm honest with you.
Okay.
I do.
Well, that's very kind and respectful of you.
It wasn't intended to be kind or respectful. I don't like the ad hominem attacks.
I could respond in kind.
You can say what you like about me. I don't care.
I think that I'm above that. I'm not going to do that, Piers. That's not who I am.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I let it go for almost 3 minutes, but that got me. Don, there's more on this clip, but I'm sorry. I could respond in kind. I could do ad hominem attacks. I can say mean and nasty things. I can engage in a bitter argument and feud with you, but that's not me. That's not who. Does Don Lemon not know who Don Lemon is? Maybe we should introduce Don Lemon to Don Lemon. Like we haven't seen him for the last 20 years on our television screens. The ad hominem attacks, the attacks that. Remember when he started his program, I think in the second year of the Trump administration, when the story about Trump referring to countries like Haiti and North Korea and some other country as countries. Remember that? And Don Lemon began his day by saying, good evening. I'm Don Lemon. This is CNN. And the president of the United States is a racist. But he doesn't engage in ad hominem. He doesn't engage in character assassination. He doesn't. This is amazing. Look at his face. Oh, he's so cool and serene and above it all and above the fray. This is beautiful. And I do love the fighting and the back and forth about, listen, you asked me to come on. You told me I don't do panels, which I love that. Don't you know who I am? I'm Don Lemon. Don Lemon has been unemployed for like over a year now. Don Lemon was so bad that CNN fired him. That's how bad Don Lemon was. All right. And so I don't do panels. Please. Should be happy to do a panel just to get his face and his name out there. That said, Piers says, well, I want to talk about this and cancel culture and getting fired. And how is it not appropriate to say, well, here's an example. You got fired for what you said on the air, just like Jimmy Kimmel got fired for what he said. I mean, listen, I'm no huge fan of Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan does this. He just called Don Lemon a because he wanted to get a rise out of him. He wants a fight. This is what Piers Morgan does. It's how Piers Morgan gets clicks and gets attention, and I guess we're guilty of giving him some. But there's absolutely nothing out of line. If you're bringing Don Lemon under the pretense of speaking about Jimmy Kimmel getting fired, free speech in America, and losing your job for something you say on television, considering the fact Don Lemon got fired for something he said on television. And for Don Lemon to now pretend that he's not Don Lemon is glorious. All right, let's finish this up, and then we'll get to what he said about transgender athletes, men playing in women's sports here.
I don't understand why you're playing the victim card when you yourself mentioned cancel culture.
Because Piers, oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. Let me do this.
What are you going to do? Read out my team's messages to you?
Piers? It should be embarrassing. Yeah, I can read out the team messages to you because I just think it's completely unfair, and you know that. I'm prepared to answer your question, and then I'm going to move on. I told you I'm prepared to talk about Charlie Kirk's death, the response to it, and cancel culture, and and freedom of the press, and freedom of speech.
You were prepared to talk about cancel culture, or you weren't?
No, I'm not prepared.
Oh, you're not prepared to talk about
cancel culture, but that has. Oh my God, Piers, could you stop interrupting me?
Not really. You're kind of exhausting me. It's ridiculous. Why would you?
All right. I'm no fan of Piers Morgan, but sometimes he is my id. Sometimes he's doing exactly what I would do if I were in that show. Will you stop interrupting me? No, you're kind of exhausting. And get to the point. You're ponderous, dude. But don't you understand? It's like, are you prepared to talk about cancel culture? No, I'm not. What does that mean, prepared? What, you got to ask ChatGPT to come up with your memorized talking points? What is wrong? This guy has been a journalist, teleprompter reader, personality in the news and pop culture for like 30 years. But honestly, your basic top 10 headlines in the news every single day, you should be able to just talk about. And he's not prepared to talk about cancel culture. By the way, I thought that was what they said they wanted to have him on to talk about, right? Let's just roll this back for a second.
The response to it,
hold on. Let me, because he's saying what he's prepared to talk about. Because he doesn't listen. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about CNN because he's got a non-disclosure agreement for his separation clause, where he got his big payout for the balance of his contract. And so if he says anything about CNN or anything that happened at CNN, he'll have to pay back his payout. That's a non-disclosure agreement. People in the media have them all the time. By the way, when Donald Trump signs a non-disclosure agreement with an actress named Stormy Daniels, and there's a payout for that, people like Don Lemon call it hush money. So let me just be clear. Don Lemon doesn't want to talk about CNN and address exactly what Piers Morgan laid out here in terms of the terms under which he got fired because of what he said on the air. Not because it's embarrassing, not because he doesn't have anything to say, not because he doesn't have an opinion, not because he's not prepared. The reason he doesn't want to talk about it is because he was paid hush money. He was paid hush money to not talk about it. It's called a non-disclosure agreement. But when Trump does it, it's hush money, and he gets convicted of a crime that they make up about it. Just to be clear. But all right, so here's Don Lemon talking about what he is prepared to talk about. And then he immediately says, that he's not prepared to talk about it.
Read out my
If you
team's
want me to do
messages
this,
to you.
Piers, it should be embarrassing. Yeah, I can read out the team messages to you because I
What
just
are
think
you
it's
prepared to
completely
talk about,
unfair,
then, Don?
and you know that. I'm prepared to answer your question, and then I'm going to move on. I told you I'm prepared to talk about Charlie Kirk's death, the response to it, and cancel culture, and and freedom of the press.
Okay, so right there, I'm prepared to talk about Charlie Kirk's death, the reaction to it, cancel culture, freedom of the press, right? And then when Piers Morgan specifically asked him about cancel culture,
and freedom of speech,
you weren't prepared to talk about cancel culture, or you weren't?
Unless you. No, I'm not prepared.
You're not prepared to talk
about cancel culture, but that has. Oh my God, Piers, could you stop interrupting me?
Not really. You're kind of exhausting me. It's ridiculous. Why would you react this way to a perfectly normal? Obviously, if you mention cancel culture, obviously it's rational and logical that I would ask you whether you felt what happened to you at CNN was that. I played the clip, and then you throw a hissy fit.
I've given you a moment. Enough. I've given you your moment.
I don't want a moment.
This is going to go viral. So please,
I don't want a moment.
Yes, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't do this. Otherwise, you would be a respectful journalist and host. And
I don't think I'll take lectures on being a respectful journalist
because you want a moment. Oh my gosh, Piers.
I won't.
I can't.
Yeah, if I were Piers, I would not take a lecture from Don Lemon, of all people, about being a respectful journalist and a respectful host. Again, it's like Don Lemon doesn't know that we spent 10 years watching the Don Lemon show. He was the worst. All right, I'll stop it. I'll let it run to the end here, and then we'll get out of the next clip.
Can't even hear because there's a delay, and you keep talking. And what do you want me to do? Like rip the earpiece out in the mic and run off so you have a moment?
No, I don't care.
Are you going to let me answer the question? Are you just going to keep pillaring me with questions?
I don't know why you've gone on this weird rant. I don't understand any of it. Why have you done this weird reaction? I simply asked you about whether you felt your departure from CNN was, in your eyes, an example of cancel culture. I played the clip,
Piers,
and I then said, when you watch it back, do you really understand what you were saying?
This is why I don't do this, but you're embarrassing yourself, Piers.
Actually, you might be embarrassing yourself, Don.
Oh my God. Okay.
All right. And again, I don't really like either of these people, but it's absolutely glorious and entertaining to watch. And my favorite part is Don Lemon saying, "This is why I don't do this." Do this means actually responding to questions and engaging in a back and forth with somebody who is challenging you on your positions. All right, which moves us on to this segment. The clip was set up by Vigilant Fox. Love that account on X. You should follow them, Vigilant Fox. This has been a theme of mine that I've been telling you this week when it comes to positions on the left. When you're an outspoken, doctrinaire, to the letter leftist in America, and you have to uphold the policies that they uphold, knowing that they defy logic and reason and science and just basic common sense, when you're on that 20 side of the 80-20 issue, but you are forced because of your politics and because you've been brainwashed to be on the political left for one reason or another. Maybe it's a grift for money. Maybe you're a true believer, whatever it is. When you have to stand up and actually articulate these positions, and when these things come out of your mouth, you end up sounding like a moron. And I don't think they're stupid, although actually Don Lemon is probably one of the stupidest people in the media. So Don Lemon is the exception to the rule. But generally speaking, these people are not stupid. But it's impossible to articulate these ideas and not sound like a moron. So Piers Morgan turns Don Lemon to his position, because Don Lemon, by the way, if you care, if it's important to you, is gay. He thought he was untouchable at CNN, by the way. He's a gay black man. You can't fire me. You kidding? I checked 2 big boxes there, right? And so because he's gay, he has to stand up and support every single one of the LGBTQIA++ agenda items. And these days, that means being all in on transgender rights. That means supporting and celebrating a man going into a boxing ring for the Olympics and beating the hell out of a woman and winning a gold medal. And when challenged on that, take a listen to how Don Lemon defends his position.
You saw a young female Italian boxer quit after 40 seconds because she'd never been hit that hard and genuinely feared for her life. And Iman Khalif goes on to win gold medal at the Olympics. Does that not ring an alarm bell for you, Don? I mean, do you not think that the reason we separate sexes in the Olympics is because males have an advantage? I mean, why would you not think that's important?
Do you want me to tell you the truth?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, but Piers, I'll tell you the truth about this. I heard about this story, but it's not something that I focus on. I'm not watching the Olympics like that. Maybe I'm different. I'm just not. I'm not that interested in watching everything. I like to watch the swimming. I like to watch the gymnasts. I'm not interested in boxing or any of that because I think it's a brutal sport anyway. So for me, it's just not that interesting. I'm sorry that anybody was hit that hard, but if you put yourself in the arena to be hit and someone hits you hard, then whose fault is that?
Well, you expect to be hit by other women, not men.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know who
when
she
men,
expected
when men
to be
hit
hit
women,
by.
we call it.
I'm sure she saw. I'm sure whoever was in that competition understood who they were going into the ring with. And if you put yourself in that competition in the middle of a ring where punches are being thrown, then you can expect to get hit hard, whether it is a man or a woman. And that's all I have to say about that.
So you would have no objection to men fighting women in a boxing ring?
I did not say that. I just said that's all I have to say about that.
But isn't that the implication of what you're saying?
No, I've said in many different ways. That's all I have to say about that.
You know, I love it when they're confronted with the illogic of their positions and the atrociousness of their position. Then all he can say is, "That's all I have to say about that." Boy, the privilege of being Don Lemon to just say, "I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just not going to say anything else." Yeah, he said enough. He definitely said enough. Couple observations here. The Olympics and this story took place and developed and transpired when he was still the morning host on CNN. This was a story everybody was talking about and everybody saw it. And now he likes to pretend like, well, I didn't really watch it. I didn't pay attention to it. His job was to pay attention to it. It was his job to report on this. I like the swimming. I like the gymnastics, but that's about it. The boxing is brutal. But if you're a boxer, you should know that when you go into the ring, you're going to get hit in the face. Wait, so if you're a female boxer, you should just expect to be hit in the face by a man. Well, you know, you should know who you're going up against. The lack of any moral clarity or any side of moral anything. The lack of a moral compass when it comes to an issue like this is absolutely astounding. But you see what I mean? You have to check your morality, your ethics, and your brain at the door if you are in the business of articulating the standard doctrinaire textbook positions of the political left in America today, especially when it comes to so-called transgender rights. You need to stand up with a straight face and say, oh, yeah, that's a man, but that man now dresses like a woman, calls himself a woman, gave himself a female name, and has long hair, and therefore that's a woman. And there's nothing wrong with that man. Now we all have to must call a woman going into a boxing ring and hitting other women in the face. In fact, I celebrate it. In fact, we're going to award that person. We're going to champion it and make them a hero. And you need to be able to say that with a straight face. And the second you're challenged on it and say, well, but wait a second, what? You have to be Don Lemon and say, I have nothing else to say. I have nothing else to say. And you know what? It's true. There really is nothing else that anyone who supports that position can say. And frankly, at this point, from our perspective, you've said plenty.